When I pull up next to a car at a red light and it turns green, well, I just can't resist.
Woo!
For the last few minutes, nothing is working. The system keeps rebooting, and it's a bit scary that an operating system can crash multiple times while driving. The gas station owner was in the middle of washing his car. And guess what kind of car he drives? A Tesla Model 3. It's like the rule among drug dealers. Don't get high on your own supply. And if gas station owners are already driving electric, then I don't know what else there is to say. Good morning, everyone. Another week as an electric trucker begins. It's Monday morning, and today is going to be a big driving day. I've already set off from Leer with a full charge, heading south to Osnabrück, where I have a delivery since there's still some cargo in the trailer. After that, I'll head to a second delivery spot near Oldenburg, then get reloaded and head southwest toward Trier. So today, I'll most likely hit the maximum daily driving time. I've already planned where I'll charge during my 45-minute break, and I know I won't need to load the truck by myself at the customer's place. That's always good to know beforehand, so I can take a lunch break and do a bit of planning for the next charging stop. Luckily, in southwest Germany, there's the Aral-Pulse-Rhine-Alps corridor, which is a long stretch with Aral-Pulse truck charging points. I arrived at a charging station where I have to do an emergency charge. I had a lot of bad luck today, because the Aral station I initially wanted to charge didn't work at all. I even tried using charging cards from other providers, but none of the chargers responded. So, I just kept driving, which is also my number one tip. If you don't absolutely need to charge, don't waste time with broken chargers. If you're feeling generous, you can call the hotline, but when I tried, the line was busy and after 10 minutes I gave up. Anyway, I moved on, and after my second unloading stop, I ran out of driving time, so I had to take a 45-minute break. I didn't want to stop in the middle of nowhere, so I thought I'd head over here, which is far from ideal. They only have a 50 kilowatt charger here, which is pretty useless for me, and only one HPC charger. So of course, sooner or later an EV arrived. The Iveco started charging at 200 kilowatts, though the station can go up to 300. Then the Enyaq plugged in, and now I'm charging at 100 kilowatts, while the Enyaq gets 25. I think the charger has some issues delivering the full power. It's not perfect, but better than not charging at all. I was at around 50% battery, so it's not a huge deal. I'll finish my break, get back on the road, and head to a larger charging park with more stations. As a truck driver, smaller stations with just 1 or 2 chargers are a no-go. Aim for charging parks with 6 to 10 chargers, where you have more flexibility. The charging power has evened out now. The Enyaq is at 81% and charging at 27 kilowatts, while I'm now getting 150 kilowatts, which is half of the charger's capacity. I'm a bit surprised though. I thought the charger had 4 rectifiers, each at 75 kilowatts. If the Enyaq is only pulling 25 kilowatts, that would mean I should get the other 3, allowing me to charge at 225 kilowatts. But hey, 150 kilowatts is better than 100, so I won't complain. This is what the Iveco's interior display shows while charging. It shows the current charging power at 143 kilowatts. The screen also updates how long it'll take to reach a full charge, which in this case is about 2 hours. Unfortunately, there's no option to limit the charge level. And one important thing, avoid pressing the start-stop button. It might seem like it just turns on the ignition and lets you access more functions, but pressing it ends the charging process. The Scania and Volvo have an exterior button to stop charging, but the Iveco doesn't. I'm a bit torn about giving people charging tips, or if that comes off as patronizing. For example, this Enyaq here is charging at 25 kilowatts, while there's a 50 kilowatt charger right next to him, but they are at over 85% charge anyway, so it doesn't make much sense to charge in the first place, because charging speed is way faster with a lower battery level. They could just keep driving and save some time. I think sharing tips is fine, but asking someone to move so I can charge faster is a bit tricky. Not everyone is going to be understanding, and I'm not looking to get into an argument. I think if they have a friendly vibe or we already have a conversation, I could offer a suggestion, but otherwise, I'll leave it. It's not really my business anyway. Let's talk a bit about regenerative braking. One thing I really like is that this truck has one pedal driving. You can control everything with just the accelerator pedal, from full acceleration to maximum regeneration. It's a little jumpy at first though. There's so much power when accelerating, and the regenerative braking is strong too, so it takes some time to get the feel of it. And with this lever here, you can adjust the 6 levels of regeneration, which are also shown on the display. You can also turn it completely off if you want to coast. And one thing I really like is this small groove on the lever, which makes it really easy to adjust with just one finger. One thing that is missing is auto hold. If you press the brake firmly, it has a hill assist function where it holds the brake for 3 or 4 seconds so you don't roll back on an incline. But after that, it lets go. So the only way to relax your foot is by using the handbrake. I mean, people drove for decades without auto hold and survived, but once you get used to it, it's one of those features you really miss. In the Scania, I could not activate cruise control while regenerative braking was active, but it works fine here. However, it doesn't seem to use the regenerative braking when pressing the brake pedal. So if you haven't pulled the lever, braking just wastes the energy. That's not an issue for me, but for new drivers who never used regenerative braking before, it would be better if it would be more foolproof and drive efficiently by default. I'm taking my dog for a quick round at the loading point now. You can see my truck is being fully loaded with plants, so today it's more about volume than weight. And knowing the load beforehand is helpful, because you can more effectively plan your route and charging stops. I was focused on my route to Trier, but my first unloading point is in Münster, only 200 kilometers or 124 miles from here, which I can reach without a recharge, so I could have even skipped that ENBW stop entirely. I've arrived at my last stop for today. It's 5 p.m., and I'm in Ladbergen at an Aral Pulse station, which I already spotted from the highway. On the left side of the chargers is the access for the Burger King drive-thru, so I can't park there, but overall, it is spacious enough. There's quite a lot of people charging right now, and because I plan to charge to 100%, I'll unhitch first so I won't block the road. If I were just passing through for a quick charge, it might be fine to charge without unhitching, but I'll spend the night here anyway, so I might as well reserve my spot. I just had a little chat with a curious MG driver and even another trucker who came by. The MG driver left 10 minutes ago, but my charging power hasn't gone back up yet. Maybe there's a technical reason for it, but the station is rated for 300 kilowatts, so I'll wait another 5 minutes and see if anything changes. Today we drove 475 kilometers or 295 miles, starting at 100% battery and arriving here with 26%. I did recharge 14% at the ENBW charger, totaling 88% used. With the battery's net capacity of 613 kilowatt hours, we used around 539 kilowatt hours. That's about 1.13 kilowatt hours per kilometer or 1.82 per mile. I wasn't heavily loaded and even drove empty for a while, so the consumption today is a bit higher than usual. By today's calculations, the truck's real-world range is around 539 kilometers or 334 miles. But in the end, consumption is key, because that's where the costs come in. Range is almost secondary because of the drive and rest times. But now I'll restart the charger to get the full 300 kilowatts. Now the Iveco is showing what it can do, charging at the maximum 300 kilowatts. I'd still be okay with 150, but if I were on a tight schedule, I'd have to play parking attendant and ask people to not use my charger. The load sharing of these chargers is a downside for truckers, which makes it so much more important to build more truck charging infrastructure. At the Aral Pulse truck stations, each charging point is dedicated for one truck, which makes the whole experience less stressful. The volatility at these charging stations is incredible. A moment ago it was full, and now there's no one here. And in another 5 minutes it could be full again, because people do tend to charge in the evening. Which also means that parking across multiple chargers, just because it's empty, is foolish at chargers that have so much throughput.
Was der für einen Lärm macht.
But I have no idea why the truck is so loud this time. It's charging at full power, but I wonder why it's stressing the battery that much. It's almost like the truck has a magnet that attracts other electric trucks. This time it's an FH electric. The driver just told me that they use it in regional and local transport, but also for long-haul trips for the same route. The truck is fully charged, but now I've got a bit of an issue. I need to move it again, which will interrupt my rest period. I've already been here for 2 hours, which leaves me with 7 hours of rest to go, and if I move the truck now, the rest timer will reset back to 9 hours. But I heard about a workaround from another trucker at the charging station. If you are parked for 31 seconds and drive for 29 seconds, the system still counts the minute as rest time. And the trick is to string together the 29 seconds of the current and the next minute, giving you almost a minute of drive time without resetting the rest time. The timer switched to 6 hours and 58 minutes, and now I'm waiting out the first 31 seconds. I have plenty of space behind me, so it's all set. The handbrake is off and I'm still on brake. I've got one car to my right, which isn't ideal, but with the power of this truck I can easily get out.
Echt gefährlich, ja.
I've reached the 1 minute mark, so I have another 29 seconds to go.
So, wir müssen jetzt den Auflieger ganz nach unten fahren.
I have to lower the trailer all the way down. but I'll stop now because it's getting really tight and I don't want to ram the trailer. I wasn't able to get fully lined up, so I think I'll have to give it another go. But good news. The timer says 6 hours and 57 minutes. So, the trick worked. I just have to do it once more to hook up the trailer. Well, what can I say? The trailer's all hooked up and ready to go. And up here it's showing 6 hours and 47 minutes, which means the rest period wasn't interrupted. With this 30-second or 1-minute trick, you've got a good emergency option to work with. But the trailer has to be parked close to the charging station, else you would have to do this several times, and in the worst case, you'd block other trucks and cars. Another option would be to pull out the driver card and go without it. But that's pushing it a bit too far for me. Driving and rest time regulations aren't to be taken lightly. I'm glad that I'm using my phone's GPS because for the last few minutes nothing is working. The system keeps rebooting, and it's a bit scary that an operating system can crash multiple times while driving. At least the essentials like the indicators and safety systems are still working, but this is definitely not ideal. I had an early start this morning and delivered some pretty heavy trees. Next, I'm headed southwest, driving into a bit of a charging desert. So my plan is to stop at a truck station in the Ruhr area, so I'll have enough range to get back out later. I'm now at an Aral Pulse truck charging station. One car parked pretty inconvenient here, but he's moving, thankfully. If he hadn't, it would have been tricky to park, and his car would have been at risk. Now I'm just maneuvering carefully to get into this spot. These spots are clearly designed for charging without a trailer, but I'm surprised Aral set it up this way because the left CCS charger is unusable with the wash station blocking it. And these Alpatronic chargers are customizable, so Aral could have ordered them without the left charger, but maybe it's too much of a hassle and they order them in bulk anyway. Otherwise, I noticed something interesting from the online photos. There's a sign asking drivers to keep the chargers open for Amazon trucks from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Seems like Amazon has a logistics hub nearby and partnered with Aral on these stations. This does foreshadow how important reservation systems will become for truck charging as demand grows. With big logistics companies like Amazon switching to electric trucks, there will be a need for better information sharing and a reservation system. There are software concepts out there, but any solution will need to work across all of Europe, not just in single regions or countries. I'm currently delivering plants in a residential area, and those 100 trees you see are all part of a new hedge being planted. We unloaded them all by hand, and I look like a mess now. I've now driven 1,550 kilometers or 963 miles with the Iveco, and I really enjoyed it. The steering is super smooth, much more than in the Scania, which was pretty heavy. I think the Volvo had a similar light steering. The truck is also incredibly nimble thanks to its powerful acceleration. It doesn't feel like you're driving a truck at all. Even the Scania felt a bit sluggish. The Iveco has a direct gear ratio, so you don't have to shift gears while accelerating, making it smooth and predictable, even during regeneration. However, I've noticed that the regeneration isn't as strong at lower speeds. The maximum regeneration is 250 kilowatts, so I sometimes need to use the foot brake because it doesn't slow down enough. But that's not a big issue. I used to think that driving slowly up hills would save energy, a belief I carried over from the world of combustion engines. In that context, it makes sense because a combustion engine runs inefficient under full load and is more efficient at optimal RPMs, which often means going slower uphill. But with electric motors, they're efficient across the entire RPM range. Sure, at maximum RPM, there might be more heat generated that needs cooling, but those are minor nuances. Whether I drive up the hill at 30 or 60 kilometers per hour, the energy required to get to the top is essentially the same. The only difference is air resistance. So, it turns out that driving slower isn't as significant of a factor in energy savings as I once thought. It's a great message for everyone who will be driving electric trucks in the future. You can drive up the hills without worrying about using too much energy.
Hallo, der Co-Pilot.
At the loading site, I just received a pager that notifies me when it's my turn to enter the facility and load. They said it would take about an hour till it's my turn, and when I exited the highway earlier, I noticed these two chargers and thought, why not charge when I have to wait anyway? When I told them about my plan, they were very kind and understanding. I could even leave the trailer at their place. So I drove the 2 minutes over here to charge. I've charged my truck to 80% and I'm on my way to get the trailer. The only thing that worries me is the pager. I hope I did not miss the notification because I was too far away from the place. But at least the charging worked out while I waited. It's been an incredibly long and exhausting day. I managed to find a parking spot 15 minutes before my shift ends, but there is no restaurants or amenities nearby. I really need a shower because I'm completely drenched in sweat. Anyway, I was lucky to find a space. The spot's pretty big, so it worked out. But without a reverse camera, you really have to rely on your eyes and maneuver in slowly. Today I've driven nearly 600 kilometers, or 372 miles, and the battery's at 75%, which is enough for the first 4.5 hour shift tomorrow. So, I have flexibility for tomorrow, and the Iveco did a fantastic job today. I've been diligent this morning and already drove 300 kilometers, or 186 miles, using about 50% of the battery. So in total, I'm getting a range of about 550 kilometers, or 340 miles. The truck is only loaded with 10 tons, but I'm pretty satisfied with it regardless. Now I'm heading north towards Wilhelmshaven, and I could have charged in Düsseldorf, but none of the stations are directly on the route. Instead, I'm now in Dortmund, and I got super lucky. I was able to enter from the back and squeeze right in here to charge without needing to maneuver or unhitch my trailer. Right now, I'm getting constant 300 kilowatts of charging power, which is perfect. Since I've been driving for 4 hours, I need to take a 45-minute break anyway, so this worked out perfectly timing-wise. You can also see 3 Volvo FH Electric from Amazon parked here. Once big players like Amazon ramp up their electric truck fleets in the coming months and years, these charging parks might quickly start filling up. And I noticed that they are planning a reservation system here too. There was an LED screen that just showed Aral Pulse, and now that I'm charging, it's lit up red. So it seems like they're using digital signs, not just regular ones. There's also a note saying that the spot is reserved for electric trucks during charging, and to check the reservation status on the info screen. And I just spoke with one of the Amazon drivers, and in total, there are 5 FH electric trucks in operation here. Amazon has teams across Germany driving electric trucks stationed at specific locations. These trucks are on the road all day and get charged here either after or between tours. Looks like Amazon and Aral have a pretty solid partnership going. Curious as I am, I called Hannes Beck, my contact at Aral Pulse, who's responsible for the truck charging network. He explained that the setup in Düsseldorf is the first stage, where they have a simple way of communicating with the public about certain reservation times. And here in Dortmund, they're testing a more dynamic system where the screen displays when a slot is reserved and when it's available. These Alpatronic chargers run on the Open Charge Point protocol, and although the reservation function has been part of OCPP for a while, it hasn't been used yet. But in the future, only the driver with the reservation will be able to charge, which is a step-by-step approach Aral is taking to find an optimal solution. Of course, reservation systems have pros and cons. One risk for a charging operator is that a reserved spot could block a paying customer, which they definitely want to avoid. So, I'm really curious to see how this all develops over the next few years. I'm more than happy to test things out, and I think it's great that Aral is experimenting with these pilot locations to shape the future of truck charging. And there was one detail that I found really funny. The Amazon driver, the gas station owner, and I were having a chat while the gas station owner was in the middle of washing his car. And guess what kind of car he drives? A Tesla Model 3. It's like the rule among drug dealers. Don't get high on your own supply. And if gas station owners are already driving electric, then I don't know what else there is to say. The remaining range in electric cars and trucks are often not really precise, especially with headwind and rain. So, what I like to do is keep track of how far I can drive per percentage of charge. I did this just now, and at 80 kilometers or 50 miles per hour with headwinds and rain, I'm getting exactly 5 kilometers or 3.1 miles per percent. That would mean a range of 500 kilometers or 310 miles. On the return trip, I'll have a tailwind, so it could be even better. This little trick makes range estimates way more accurate than the displays that can't account for factors like load weight, weather, or terrain. I think I'll collect some data for future reference, once for 40 tons with headwinds and rain, once for an empty load with tailwind and clear weather, and one for somewhere in between. Usually, the driving hours are the limiting factor, but for those rare cases where the range is more important, it's necessary to have some data. Just because the battery is low doesn't mean I can't still accelerate in the city. It's actually the most fun part. When I pull up next to a car at a red light and it turns green, well, I just can't resist.
Woo!
And of course, this quick acceleration was purely for safety reasons, because of the blocked road ahead. I've arrived at my unloading spot, and they said they'd be waiting for me. But there's actually no one here. The gate's locked, and dispatch just confirmed that they won't unload until tomorrow morning. So that throws the whole plan out the window, since I was supposed to pick up my next load at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I'll have to find a parking spot for the night and come back here in the morning. It's frustrating because it's only 2 pallets, but that's part of the job. I'm awkwardly parked on the street, luckily with little traffic. But here's a note to all car drivers. If you see a truck with hazard lights on, please be understanding. We can't just repark on a whim, and these changes in schedule happen a lot. But here's something interesting. I've dropped below 10% battery. It warned me at 20% to charge soon, but now under 10%, it's telling me to charge immediately and won't stop beeping. I can't even turn off the alert. Technically, I should still have about 45 kilometers left. Anyway, I'll find a spot to park and charge tonight, so I can start with a full battery tomorrow and be ready for whatever the day brings. I arrived at a 300 kilowatt charger and am now charging the truck back up. In the meantime, I'm going to take a walk and grab some food. And about that lock trick I mentioned in the previous video, it was just a joke, not something to take seriously, but ENBW gave me an even better idea today. This charger has some warning tape, probably because the plug is broken, but it's even more effective as a deterrent. You can see it from a distance, and it's also very authentic, since charging stations do have issues sometimes. So thanks to ENBW for an even better idea. On a more serious note, something strange happened while I was backing up with the trailer. The truck suddenly stopped moving and displayed an error message. Loss of drive power, please pull over. It was a bit alarming because it completely shut down. After restarting, it worked fine again, so I'm not sure what caused it. Maybe the low battery, because it can sometimes be tricky for the battery management system to accurately assess the state of charge at very low levels. Although these issues are more common with LFP batteries. If it happens again, I'll start getting concerned, but for now, the truck works again. It's been a long day and today shows that logistics are always unpredictable. But Dispatch did a great job keeping things running, and I'm adapting as I go.
So, einen schönen guten Morgen.
I had a successful start today in Wilhelmshaven and completely unloaded the trailer at 7 a.m. Now I'm on my way back to the yard for a local delivery tour. I've parked the Iveco, opened it up on both sides, and it's getting filled to the top with wooden houses. We'll then unload it at our location for temporary storage before distributing it to various long-haul routes to different customers. After that, I'll load up for another trip in the afternoon, plus there's a long route coming up on Friday with a brand new trailer. I'm back on the road and just left the yard after swapping the loaded trailer with an empty one. It's a huge advantage when you have many different trailers. You can decouple the loading and unloading times from the driver's shift time and can optimize everyone's schedule. This time, I'm not pulling a Krone trailer, but a Schmitz Cargo Bull, and the special thing about this one is that it has a trailing axle or steering axle. This means the turning radius of the truck is smaller since the pivot point of the trailer is set further forward, giving it city-friendly maneuverability. With this steering axle and plenty of power, I can move pretty quickly and clear intersections safely. There was a little issue with the tarp latch at the back though. It just wouldn't go in. I thought I'd have to grab another trailer to send this one for repairs, but that's not how logistics works. Renee, who manages our warehouse, came over with a grinder and some tools, and 10 minutes later, it was fixed. Time is money in this business, and any problem you can solve immediately needs to be taken care of right away. Otherwise, those little issues just pile up, and you can't afford that. Now I'm heading out to get loaded, and even though I lost a bit of time, I'm confident everything will still work out fine. I just took a stroll with my dog, and I found an old street scooter. It's the electric vehicle by the Deutsche Post. They needed a delivery vehicle for their specific use case, and this is what they came up with. The design is really minimalistic and tailored for small deliveries. It allows easy loading and unloading by just sliding the door open. In terms of range, it's designed for urban deliveries, likely around 100 kilometers or 62 miles. For charging, it uses a Type 2 connection on the front left with just 3.7 kilowatts, which is perfectly fine for a small battery with long overnight standby. The used car market for these vehicles could be fascinating for many logistics companies. A lot of them have been produced, and almost every Deutsche Post depot has some. But I must mention that it's not comparable to any passenger car. We have plenty of MG5s in our fleet that are perfect for everyday errands. The street scooter, on the other hand, has almost nothing inside. I believe you can even get it without a passenger seat for more storage. I just noticed this little blue cloud icon up top, which means there's a software update available. I'm curious to see if it works. I'm not sure if it downloaded it via mobile data, but I've never connected it to Wi-Fi before. I started the truck, but the version is still the same and the update button has disappeared. Well, I'm glad it hasn't bricked anything.
Never stop a running system.
Guess I'm not doing an update for now. The last day of the week has begun. I just secured the cargo, which was quite fiddly since I had to open the right side as well. Then it started to rain, and I got completely soaked. Now I have the seat heater on max, trying to warm up. This is also my first night drive with the Iveco, and I have to say the LED headlights are pretty good. The Scania had better lights, but the Iveco definitely gets the job done. It also has cornering lights. which means that when you slow down and turn on the indicators, a light turns on that illuminates the side a bit. They also activate when you're reversing. You would assume that the large displays would be distracting at night, but they actually aren't, as long as you adjust the brightness. There are two paddles on the left back side of the steering wheel to adjust the brightness. It's very convenient that this control isn't hidden in the display, but is a quick access button for easy use at night. I arrived, and I'm leaving the trailer here. Parking it was quite tricky with this steering axle, because when reversing it locks in. But there is a switch for it, so I looked around. This is the handbrake, which you can release when it's coupled to the truck, and you can also adjust the air suspension up and down. There's a switch to lock the lift axle, which raises when it's lightly loaded. But where do you lock the steering axle? I had to ask around, and it turns out the switch is right here. Figuring these things out in a rush is not easy. I'm back at the Shell truck stop I've been a few times before. For those who didn't see the previous videos, this is another Alpatronic charger without cooled cables, and after around 17 minutes, the charging power drops off. So, it's better to position yourself to use both plugs. I switched the cables, and now it's back to full charging power. This is really practical to know when you're in a hurry and want to maximize your range, because it can mean an extra 30 to 40 kilometers of charge. There's something else I wanted to mention. The Iveco has a vampire or phantom drain, which means energy just disappears. With this truck, 1 to 2% is gone overnight, which doesn't sound too bad, but 1 to 2% is over 10 kilowatt hours. I can't explain it because the high voltage battery is definitely not the cause. You would hear it when it switches on since the relays are relatively loud. If it has a standby consumption due to connectivity, it would more likely affect the 24-volt battery, but it takes a bit for the 24-volt battery to recharge, so you wouldn't immediately see that energy has disappeared in the instrument panel. My theory is that the battery management system recalculates overnight and finds a slightly different percentage to display. It's an interesting detail I wanted to share, something I haven't seen in any other truck so far. This truck is so modern and digital, and with that, new problems arise that more traditional trucks simply don't have. I'm currently at a cement loading site, and it's quite fascinating. You drive in, tell them your license plate number, and are weighed immediately. So I now have the information on what the Iveco S-eWay weighs with a standard flatbed trailer. 18,540 kilograms. My truck is allowed to weigh 42 tons, which means it has a maximum payload of 23,460 kilograms. That's about 500 kilograms less than a diesel truck, which is allowed to transport 24 tons. I believe that's exactly the difference caused by the larger battery. Now here's the exciting part. Theoretically, I could load the full 42 tons, but because they only ever had diesel trucks load here before, which are allowed to weigh a maximum of 40 tons, they can only record a maximum of 40 tons in their system. So, because I'm the first electric truck to ever come here, I will be loaded to only 40 and not 42 tons. They never heard about this before, so it's nice to bring these companies up to date about electric trucks. I arrived safely and already switched trailers. Here's a little sneak peek of what I'll be driving next week, an open trailer. And these open trailers are quite practical, because you can use them for containers, but also various other things when the return trip does not include a container. The downside is that it's not very aerodynamic, so I'm curious about the consumption next week. And one more thing. The Iveco has these two covers at the charging port. However, the truck can't charge with AC, and the design is quite flimsy because the cables are always in the way. Theoretically, you could 3D print a complete cover for this CCS port and use it instead. Otherwise, till next time, and I wish you all a great weekend. Bis dann!